6:50. We've completed executive session with no action to report, and I'm calling the public session back into order. We will start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask Ms. Aruda to please lead.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please make note of the exit signs in case of an emergency so you can leave quickly and safely. And please remember that we are a no smoking district with no smoking anywhere on district grounds. We're also a hate-free district with no hate speech symbols or bullying behavior on school grounds. I think the first thing we have is this board consent agenda. These are our board committee assignments, and if you recall, earlier on we had just determined to continue the board assignments through this year, but now that Ms. Ancona is not here anymore, we do need to cover, that's a health and safety committee. We still have 2 members, so I don't know that we need to add one. And also, I've been attending almost all these committee meetings as in an ex officio capacity if I'm not an actual member of the committee. So I think we do have coverage for the committees, but is there a motion then to reappoint the board trustees as set forth here? Ms. Aruda, yes. Mr. Trent, second. Any questions or discussion?
I just want to make a comment, Madam President, if I could, please.
Mm-hmm.
I very much enjoy the Teaching and Learning Committee as someone who didn't grow up in education. And I really got an appreciation for what our district does because of that committee. And I want to apologize to the committee. I have a standing commitment on the second Thursday of the month, and that's why I've been missing your meetings. So I was going to ask you to consider moving it, but I see the vast amount of attendance you get at, and I don't want to do that. So I was considering asking if a board member would switch with me, but it would be a loss to me if I couldn't attend those meetings. So I'm going to see what I can do on my other commitment level and just try, every other month try and work that out. But I just wanted to make that notation because that's a pet peeve of mine. When we're on these committees, we have to be there. I had some family issues this month that prevented me from getting to strategic planning. But I do think it's a commitment that we make to these committees, and we should be there. And I just wanted to put that on the record as to why I've missed those 2 meetings over the last couple of months.
Okay.
And those committees are tight. We look at the calendar, because we know the
Understood.
board likes to be everywhere, so they're spaced, so there's
Understood.
there's not any place to go.
No,
really, I can
understood.
imagine. Okay.
And I want to thank the president too for attending so many of the meetings too, because you do pick up the slack when we can't be there, and that is I do notice it, and it is appreciated. So that was all. That was just a comment I wanted to make about the resolution. I stand in favor of.
Okay. So ready for the vote? All in favor? It's unanimous. I think next we have,
It's me.
it
It's
is
me.
you.
Yeah, okay. Okay, we're going to start off with something a little different than the superintendent's report. We're going to start off with board recognition. Making a commitment to public education, a school board member takes one of the most important citizen responsibilities, overseeing the education of the community's youth. Boards of education guide the local school systems and ensure public schools are flexible and responsible to the needs of their community. School boards are comprised of volunteers who do not receive any compensation for their service. They are individuals within the community who dedicate their time to improving public education. Last week was designated by the New York State School Boards Association as School Boards Recognition Week. During the month of October, South Country students worked diligently on pieces to thank and recognize our school board members for their commitment to South Country schools and public education, and of course, the school-age children of our community. At this time, a couple of things. First, I want to introduce Ms. Barbara Gallagher.
Hi, good evening.
Who's going to say a couple of words, but I'm going to also ask all of our trustees to walk around to the table to see what's before you, to do a little unveiling after Ms. Gallagher speaks. So if you would so kind to get up, move around. And then Mr. Pacini's not here. Shall I unveil Mr. Pacini's?
Yes, please.
I know.
If you could stand in.
I know I'm not quite his size, but I'll do my best. It's right in front of your chair.
After he speaks, after she
Oh, after she did.
Teacher eye for me there, Cameron.
So on behalf of Dr. Gianni and the art department, the art teachers at your buildings, for Miss Aruda it was Mandy Hoffman. For Mr. Parker, it was Stacy Patanjo at the middle school. Chris Barley at the high school for Mr. Pacini. Ms. Hayes was Brookhaven, one of our new teachers, Gianna Macarino. Cameron Trent from Brookhaven, it was Kiara Brockway.
Kramer.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Kramer, yes, thank you. And for Miss Felice at Brookhaven, it was Leland
Yep.
Richards.
Southampton.
No, she was Chris.
Chris.
But she was
Chris.
between two.
Oh, I got it all messed up.
It's all
We're
right.
close.
So these were organized by your art teachers and created by your students. So we can
You
now
ready?
unveil them.
All right, unveil.
We do it ourselves?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, look at this. Oh, my goodness.
So the students who created them are listed on the back.
Oh,
Oh,
Oh.
Can we get a photo? I don't know if I want to be in the photo though.
well, I think,
Put it over your face.
No, we're gonna get closer, right? You gotta bring it in. Cameron, you should probably get in there, so you're so cool.
Yeah, that's better.
how about you and I are like,
There we
No,
go.
tighten.
Do I look like?
Very good. Those are great. So really, yours is like a glamour shot.
I love that art teacher.
I was wondering where they got that.
I know exactly what photo it is.
It's really unbelievable.
Okay.
Those are great.
wow.
Really great. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have a lot of talent here in South Country. Barbara, please thank your staff and extend to the students as well how appreciative the board was.
Thank you. Wow. Who's gonna top that?
You're up, Dr. Gianni.
I'll just keep going with my report. Okay, as of yesterday, we have 123 known COVID-19 cases that have been reported in the district. Of these 123 reports include 25 faculty or staff and 98 students. Also, our current count for faculty, staff in quarantine is 1, and students is 11. So our numbers continue to remain rather low with regard to those in quarantine. I'm happy to report that. The New York State weekly testing requirement is now in its 4th week here in South Country. Looking at the breakdown of employees who've opted out of weekly tested, currently we have 76% of our folks who have opted out of weekly testing. And that's up from 71%, meaning, of course, that more folks are getting vaccinated, and 24% are opting for weekly testing. And I want to just mention, and I think I have before, just because folks are getting tested doesn't mean they're not vaccinated, because some of our employees are choosing to weekly test regardless of their vaccination status. As the board knows, but the public may not, South Country is the only district in Brookhaven Township that offers a full online remote learning program for families choosing remote learning only. Our program are offered through the New York State Distant Learning Consortium, and we currently have a total of 68 remote learners enrolled in those programs. It's pretty impressive. 28 youngsters are in the Mohawk Valley K-6, and the remaining 40 are in the Genesee Valley 7 through 12. And along the lines of remote learning, when an in-person student is under quarantine as a result of COVID, our teachers live stream their lessons and post work in their Google Classroom. Very few districts are doing that and providing remote learning to our students in quarantine, as such as we are. So I'm proud to say that here at South Country, our faculty and staff are truly on the forefront of remote teaching and learning. So I'm very, very happy, proud to share that. And then finally, congratulations are in order to Calvin Petitella, who was recently selected as winner of the News 12 Scholar Athlete Award, sponsored by Bethpage Federal Credit Union. As a winner, Calvin will be profiled on News 12 Long Island. He also received a $1,000 college scholarship from Bethpage Federal Credit Union. News 12 was in school yesterday, actually, to present Calvin his award and tape a quick feature that will, I'm not sure when it will air. I'm not sure anyone knows when it will air. Probably relatively soon. But again, congratulations to Calvin, congratulations to his family, all of our coaches, and the faculty staff in supporting Calvin to earn this wonderful award. And that is all the announcements I have, President Hayes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next are trustee and advisory committee reports. Ms. Aruda?
We did have teaching and learning last week, I think it was. Unfortunately, I was in and out of it 3 times. I kept getting bumped in and out. I don't know why. I could not stay into that meeting, but thankfully, I was able to get the information in the meeting, and as always, thank you so much for all that you do. Last week, I had the opportunity to visit Frank P. Long. It's been a while since we've been able to get into the schools, and I was super excited to be able to see the students in action. Thank you to Ms. Olberg and to Ms. Brzezinski for bringing me along. Watching the children engaged in their learning was just amazing. Whether it was reading novels or discussing science and being able to bring it into their own lives and have discussions, the children were at ease. They easily were able to just talk with me or anybody around. So it was really wonderful. The things that are going on at Frank P. Long are just amazing. And throughout our district. I know many of us were at homecoming, seeing the smiling faces of the students and the faculty and the community coming out. It was just a great event. Great job by our Bellport football team, both JV and by the varsity. And last but not least, each and every day I get to the joy of picking up my daughter for the middle school play. And watching the children coming out from the play rehearsals, it's amazing to see that we are really on our way back to normalcy and really watching their faces and their joy coming back and seeing the children coming off the field, whether it be from soccer or football practice. It's just really nice to be able to see life starting to come back to normal.
Mr. Parker?
I, too, was able to participate in the homecoming. And I'll tell you, what a delight. It was just so much fun to Number one, to watch our team win. They did more than win, actually. But it was just a great afternoon. I enjoyed immensely. And the people who were there were just several board members. There were many community people, community leaders. And it was a pleasure. I sneak from time to time. I watch the kids as they're leaving school, as they're coming to school. I find that to be quite amazing at the same time. I think our kids do enjoy coming to school. From time to time you hear a little negative, but I think overall the kids really enjoy being in school. And I know some of the teachers, particularly in the middle school, and they have nothing but positive things to say about their students, and it just makes my heart I feel good about it every time I hear it. So that's about it for now.
Mr. Trent?
No, I don't have a report.
Ms. Belize?
Yes, over the last 2 weeks, I had 3 seminars that I attended on behalf of the board. One was the leadership development on October 15th. The second was the annual business meeting for the legislative committee on October 18th. And then on October 25th, the virtual conference, which was an annual conference that happens every year. It's usually live. It was supposed to be live in New York City, but the hotel in which it was to be hosted could not get up and running in time. So the New York State School Board Associations offered it to school board members free of charge, which was a nice little benefit. And so I will put a report together and get it out to the rest of the board. I just didn't have time to get that all together. What was interesting about both leadership development and the virtual conferences, just reinforcing everything that we have been doing over the years about equity and inclusion, and then some of the issues that we have dealt with and how to navigate through them. The good news is we're ahead of the curve, I think, from where other districts are. And so you'll see that in some of the comments that I'll make in the report that I'll submit for the next meeting. But also for the business meeting, I'm going to go in detail through the proposals. This would be legislative action that we would advocate for the New York State upcoming legislative calendar year. And what was more interesting were the proposals that were defeated and why they were defeated. In the message that we got in the email from the State Board Association, all they did was send out to you what passed, but not what didn't pass and why. And so I plan on giving you that information as well, because it was just interesting to see, because we're a big state and the needs of the upstate districts are quite different than those of downstate districts. And that's where there was a bit of a divide, but a good dialogue nonetheless. So I will share that with all of you. And I just want to echo the comments that were made about homecoming. I was able to go to the breakfast in the morning with the football team, and had planned on getting back. I also was able to help kick off the parade, watch them leave from the middle school. And I had hoped to get back for the game, but I was at another event that was unrelated to the school, but something that I will bring to the board's attention of a woman, an event that I was at, who was being honored. She's a civil rights leader and a remarkable woman, and would be an excellent speaker at one of our events. And I was at her event and just couldn't leave. The discussion that was happening about her and the accolades that were being spoken for her was just something that I felt obligated to stay there, and I did, and I'm glad I did. But I would like her to share her story with our students, because I think it would go a long way. So that's what happened over the last 2 weeks since we last met. Thank you.
In my 2 weeks, I'll start off with the attendance at the event for the civil rights leader, and I had the same feelings too as I left, which is somebody like this who lives, locally in Suffolk County would be a great person to bring in in connection with some of our guidance initiatives or any of our civics events. These are just off the top of my head, and I'm hoping that we can introduce her to some, through Dr. Gianni, to see if you'll share her with the rest, with the students, because she's really a gift. And how old is she now? She's well into her 80s.
She's 84,
84.
Okay.
and she's proud of it.
And so it's okay to talk about it,
Yeah.
because she'll tell you about it, but when she talks about her life, it's living history. All through Jim Crow and getting through college and breaking various ceilings.
As an
But I'm not going to steal the story and tell the result. I want to just see if we can share her.
And her connection to schools is what was so poignant.
Right.
Yeah.
So that would be great. I also, after, okay. With regard to the board officer seminar, I also did that one on the 15th. And I think I haven't written up notes, but just to give you some highlights is, they focused in very strongly on what exactly is the board's role. And, this is something that it's actually taken each of us some amount of time to realize that we're not the educational experts here. That's our superintendent who works through the rest of administration to do it. We're also not the complaint department. And, if anything, one thing we can do is to raise awareness about how people can get their questions answered and have it done appropriately through the, building level all the way up to Dr. Gianni if necessary. And the board advocates for the district. It's like everything that we do has to be in best interest of the district. And I think that's a role that we all assumed, and that's actually one that gives us a good feeling when we're hearing all of the positive things that are coming out of our classrooms, our activities. I also attended the audit committee meeting, and all comments about that will be later in this meeting when we have the presentation. I attended the equity committee meeting, and again, was just astounded at the presentation by a middle school student who did a PowerPoint presentation of the civics project that he and his colleagues had engaged in last spring. And in fact, he was so impressive that Ms. Doyle invited him to become a member of the committee, and by the end of the meeting, the mother had already said that it was all right. So I think we now have one more member of the committee, and as Dr. Gianni said to me when I commented about that to him, that committee's got more members than you can count. But I'll tell you, but my hope is that everybody in the district is a member of the committee, even if they're not attending the meeting. So that, and then also the virtual School Boards Association meeting that was on Monday. And I'll leave it to Cheryl to write it up since she volunteered. But there were a couple of takeaways for me from that that I just want to highlight. One of the topics was called the pandemic learning needs and future acceleration. And their comments about future acceleration was how to boost the achievement of students. And it's not just ones that maybe had trouble during the pandemic or had trouble before, but how do we boost achievement for everybody? And I liked the phrase future acceleration. So I'm just throwing that out there in case somebody's listening to this and would like to tap onto the outline topic. And the final, then they had an excellent session on social emotional learning, and particularly how that's important in this day and age. And that tied in too with what was recently posted on our website. You had posted a video by our assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction about our SEL programs, and I thought that was excellent. I really enjoyed seeing that. And finally, the final message on this session it was a message of cohesion and hope, and things to look forward to in the future. But it did talk about the very important role that school boards can play in ensuring public schools are incubators of civility, humanity, and justice. And I kind of liked that phrase too. And it does kind of incorporate what we've been trying to do throughout particularly the pandemic time, which is to try to set some standards and some stability so that our students can feel secure in knowing that they've got stability here within our schools. And I appreciate that that's been happening. So that's it for me. And I think next, do we have any no public comments? Next then is items for discussion, so that's back to you, Dr.
Yes,
Chen.
thank you. And our first item is a public hearing for the Code of Conduct. Earlier this school year, the board reviewed new hate symbols and revisions to the Code of Conduct. District Council also suggested some revisions, and Global Threat Solutions, our expert that we contracted with, developed a new hate symbol appendix, which I have included here for the board. Also attached is the revised code, and those revisions are also posted below. I offer these changes for this evening's public hearing and the board's consideration for adoption. I did confer with council a couple of times, and then of course earlier again today on the matter, who indicated that provided we clearly delineate public hearing, which I believe we have, this is a one meeting appropriate for adoption, not the usual 2 readings for a board policy. So I offer this policy and its revisions for the board's review and adoption this evening.
Now, the revised Code of Conduct, it went up online with the agenda, so the public was.
The changes were there,
Yeah.
and then today we actually put the entire board on the entire code on. So the revisions and all the appendices were there
For their
since
review.
well, for you since Thursday, and for the public since Monday.
Okay, so, but my question is, have we received any feedback from anybody with regard to this?
No feedback.
Okay. So, if it's up for our discussion, I think I'll just go back to when this first, I think we did have a discussion already about,
We had a
About it.
discussion under the advice of council.
right. So, does anybody else have any questions or comments or discussion about the proposed revision? Seeing none, is there, you're asking now for us to approve the revisions to the Code of Conduct?
Yes, as written and as listed.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve Mr. Trent, second Ms. Felice? No questions or discussion here? All in favor? It's unanimously approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our second item for discussion this evening is our independent auditor's report for the school year ending June 30th, 2021. With us this evening to present is Mr. Mike Leone of Cullen and Danowski, our external auditing firm. Mike, thanks for putting the pedal to the metal to get here a little quicker than we had
Such
anticipated.
uplifting news here today. This is great. I love it. Scholar athletes, middle school presentations. I'll have to continue the trend here. So, I'm here to present the audit summary. Before I do that, I always do this. I think it's really important. I want to thank the board for engaging us as the external auditors. I also want to extend my thanks to Christine and her staff. The annual audit, great cooperation. It's a process, so we're very appreciative of that. Moving to the audit summary. Before I do that, I did meet with the audit committee back on October 18th. We had a detailed discussion of the financial statements. They were great questions. It was a very productive meeting. So I'm only here tonight to just present a summary of the financials. But what I do want to cover for you is just kind of give you some background as far as the audit. Okay, so the district is required annually to submit an audited financial statement to the New York State Education Department, as well as the Comptroller's office for reporting purposes. Management is ultimately responsible for those financial statements. We, as the external auditors, are required to perform the audit in accordance with our professional standards, and that requires us to obtain reasonable assurance through our audit procedures that the numbers that roll up to the financial statement are fairly stated and accurately presented within the financial statements. We're also required to review compliance with laws and regulations for the school to make sure that they're complying with them and that there are no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. If there were, we would have to report them within our audit report, and I'm happy to say that there weren't. Lastly, and the most important thing, is our opinion. And our opinion that we issued on the financial statement is known as an unmodified opinion. That means that the financial statements are fairly presented, all the disclosures are fairly presented, and there's no material misstatements. So I think you'll be happy about that. One item that I did note, and I also had to discuss with the audit committee, was there was an adoption of a new principle. It's important, it's within the opinion, it was GASB 84. Means your extra classroom activities and your scholarship funds are now rolled up into your general fund. Not into your general fund, into your governmental funds. With that, moving on to the health of the district. The district did finish the year with an increase in their fund balance, and they ended up with approximately $5.8 million in unassigned fund balance, which is 4% of next year's $145 million budget, which is the 21-22, and that's in compliance with state law. Additionally, the district does have various different reserves, and overall, I would say that the district's pretty healthy. With respect to internal controls, we do issue what is known as a management letter. Management letter, there were no new comments, which I'm happy to report. There are some follow-up comments, and there is a corrective action plan that's in place for that. We still do need to complete the single audit, since the district does receive over $5 million of federal funds. That is not required to be completed until March of 2022, so we'll actively work with the district on that. So in closing, if there's any questions, I want to thank the district for the great cooperation. It was a good year for the district, finished well, in compliance with everything, so if there's any questions.
You go first?
No, you can go first.
Good evening, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
I couldn't join the audit committee meeting because I was on another business meeting, but I had hoped to get to that so that I could, this is a lot to digest.
Yes.
And I wanted 2 bites at the apple and not 1, but I couldn't, the meeting was scheduled that conflicted with my other meeting, so I couldn't be there. So, my question to you is, I appreciate that you commented the cooperation because we would expect nothing less. So thank you. So thank you for that. On payouts of retirement, do you audit the timesheets for those payouts of accruals?
So we
And
do.
did you do any random audits this time around?
So what we do is, we look at the accruals for compensated absences that are going to be paid out at year end and make sure that they're appropriately recorded. We sample a selection and then we test them to make sure that they're properly reflected within the financial.
Did you do that?
Yes, we did.
Approximately how many?
From my recollection, I think we looked at 3 or 4.
Is there a threshold that you look at?
No, it's a sample. We look at what, let's say there's an accrued liability and there's 7 or 8 people there, we may just select a handful, 2 or 3, and just make sure that they're appropriately recorded. And what we'll do is we'll look at what their ending balances were, or what their rate is, and what the calculation is for the compensated absences liability.
And you found no
We did
inconsistencies
not.
on
Not in the sample
use
that
of
was
sick
selected.
time, use of accruals,
Correct.
appointment?
Mhm.
Okay. There was the proper checks and balances?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think it's wise for a district, and do you work with any other clients that establish a threshold, that if someone's getting paid out, say, more than $10,000, that you would automatically audit those timesheets?
From an external audit standpoint?
Yes.
I think what you would do, you might want to consider that if you want to do an internal audit.
Internal?
From that perspective, yeah, but
Okay.
what I could say is I know that the district does have pretty good controls in place. There's multiple sign-offs and reviews
Okay.
before someone is paid out. So that's a good thing, but that's more of, if you want to engage an external auditor, you would do like an agreed-upon procedures, but typically that's something that you approach from an internal audit perspective. and
Okay,
you send
good.
that on your,
All
yeah.
right, thank
It's a
you for
good
that
question, though.
clarification.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
Yeah, you mentioned a corrective action plan. I didn't
Yeah.
see that in the
So
report.
management has provided us with answers as to what their plan is. I don't know if it's been formalized yet.
That was a separate letter.
Corrective action plan in place, but that's just to address any of the management letter comments that we did have. And as I mentioned, there were no new comments, they're prior year comments, primarily within the extra classroom.
Mm. But John, do we have that corrective action
Is
plan?
that, it was sent?
It's one of the documents.
It's,
in
yeah,
town.
it's a 4-page document.
And
Yeah, I
I
didn't
think
get the
the
details.
entire board got the documents prior to the audit committee meeting.
You did, you sent it in the update.
It starts with the words management response. So inside the document, when you see management response,
Yeah.
that's the corrective action plan.
Okay.
And that was, if I, may I make another comment? You still
Okay.
make comments? That was also something that came up with our state audit. That led us to the faculty advisor over the club. That was from the state audit.
The faculty auditor or?
The faculty, not auditor, we don't call it an auditor. What do we call it? Faculty advisor.
Okay.
I'm probably using the wrong terminology right now. But anyway, I'm glad to see it's, still in place. The actions are being taken and the oversight is still there and that you're still monitoring.
So, just so I understand, from an outside auditor's perspective,
Yes.
all of our controls are adequate to make sure that the money under our care is being properly reported and handled.
So let me be clear. What an audit does include is a review of the internal controls and a sampling of the internal controls. We're not like an SEC, you're not like an SEC client. We don't perform an internal control audit. That's why you have internal auditors to look at specific controls. But as part of our audit process, just to give you some sense of what we do, we'll test like 40 payroll transactions, make sure that they're approved, they're authorized, that they're being paid out properly, they're being recorded properly. We'll look at disbursements. We'll test the sample of disbursements. Plus, we'll do substantive work, literally looking at invoices to make sure that they're recorded properly and make sure that they're properly approved. And if we have any findings that relate to that make us a little uncomfortable, we would report them in the management letter. So we did testing like that. We do testing of bank reconciliations to make sure that they're recorded appropriately. We looked at the compensated absences as well. So it's targeted. As part of an audit, we do a risk assessment, taking a look at the overall district and saying, okay, what's the big risks within school districts? What are the balances that might be in those particular accounts? And how are we going to approach that? So we're going to look at it from a controls perspective. We'll look at it from a substantive perspective. We'll also look at it analytically. But again, keeping in mind that one of the things that we always look at is payroll because it's one of the largest expenditures that we do have. Hope that answered the question, is that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And, you know, just to comment on on the management letter that was done with the very few items there, and management's response is that these are issues that either have been or are in the process of being addressed. So we can move into the next year being comfortable with the state that we're in right now.
I think so. I mean, you know, from a financial health standpoint, yes, absolutely. And I think here, from a control standpoint, you know, if you don't have any new comments like that, that's a good thing. That means that you're addressing any of the ones that are outstanding. We like to see them resolved. We don't want them to go on for too long. It's a tough area that you know where those problems are left. But I mean, that's you know, the district's handling that and has a plan in place. So I think, but from an overall perspective, I think what we've seen based on our testing, the controls look pretty good. That's
So-
all. Good.
Thank you for outlining that, because my concern is to, you know, just to verify that all the structural controls within the district are where they ought to be, and that's what I'm hearing from you, that we're okay
Yeah.
with that?
And I think if you also recall, when we had the audit planning meeting, we talked a little bit about overtime. We also looked at overtime to make sure that that's properly approved and authorized as well. So, you know, there are, and again, that's why I talk about these risk assessments that we do. We think about where are the areas that you want to target and make sure that you feel comfortable with what's happening.
Very well.
Good.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
I don't think so. I want to thank you, and also thank you for the time you spent with the audit committee.
My pleasure.
And
I love great questions, and they definitely were there on the audit committee. It was a nice spirited discussion on the entire
yeah,
financial
it
statement.
consumed a considerable bit of your time. So you know, for that committee
It's the least
meeting,
I
to
could do.
get all the questions out. And so he was able to streamline his presentation tonight to target the issues
Yeah.
that the committee members were really asking about, so.
Yeah, so typically, the audit committee is where we present a very detailed review of the financial statements. When we come to the board, it's just a very high-level overview, unless there's any specific questions. And that's fine.
We need
Did you
action.
need, okay. Is there a motion to approve the audit report? And I saw Mr. Parker, and a second by Ms. Felice. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimously approved. Thank you very
Good.
much,
So you
Ms.
see, I did
Julian.
continue the trend, that was uplifting. There we go. All right, very good, thank you very much.
Thank
Everybody
you.
get home safe.
Bye-bye.
Okay, our final item this evening is a presentation from Ms. Doyle, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Accountability. Ms. Doyle, along with our district directors, have done an outstanding job pulling together the board's priorities, our planning goals, data points from assessments and surveys, all of which guide our DSIP or District Comprehensive Improvement Plan. So without further ado, I introduce to you Ms. Doyle.
Thank you, Dr. Jen.
And presentations on both screens, and you could follow along with her or on your own screen. Great.
Already not working. Not a good way to start. We put new batteries in too.
How about, oh, you can't tap there?
All right, good evening, everybody. I will try to be uplifting as well. So this evening, I will be presenting our data from last year. As you know, the last year and a half has been a challenging one, an unprecedented time for our students, for our families, for our staff. With that said, our teachers and staff did a really great job of quickly transitioning to a new way of teaching, our students a new way of learning, our staff reaching out to families, conducting home visits, these efforts. We know the effect of the pandemic and the resultant hybrid remote learning models has impacted learning and created some gaps in our students' learning progressions. Significant setbacks, especially for our most vulnerable students, so students with disabilities, students living in poverty, students not having a reliable internet connection, not having access to technology, although the district was great at providing that, or even a workspace to learn at home. So we know that we have to do something different this year and continue to, I like the term that Ms. Hayes used, what was that again?
Accelerate.
Accelerated learning moving forward. So, again, we did a great job supporting our students. And how do we move forward? So we need to frequently assess our students to see where their individual gaps are. We also need strategies to help students move past the trauma of the past 2 years, because students may be coping with a lot of stress, COVID-19, some families experience deaths, struggling with problems at home, missing out on social interactions and social engagements. All of these things have had an impact on our students. So this is a picture from one way that we're being responsive to our students and families. We, as Dr. Gianni reported, we're the only district in the Brookhaven cluster that's currently offering remote learning. This was the first week of remote learning K-6 with Mohawk Valley. And we are very lucky to be able to provide this to our families that felt more comfortable with this model. So how do we do this? The goal is the same, improving student outcomes. So we take a look at the board priorities and the strategic planning goals. We take a deep dive into our student data, both qualitative and quantitative, and we develop our action plan. Since we are a target district, our action plan is a district comprehensive improvement plan that is monitored by the state education department. This plan is our roadmap to our goal. We commit to a laser-like focus to these goals. We implement each component with fidelity. We regularly check in on our goals and have an honest assessment of our progress. We adjust, change course if necessary, and we continue with implementation. So brick by brick, we chip away, with our guiding compass always being what's best for our students. And this is how we will get to improve student outcomes. So you will see alignment to the board priorities and the strategic planning goals in our district improvement plan. And these goals and priorities were unpacked by the committee writing the improvement plan, it's sitting behind me, with some others, to ensure that we were all working towards the same outcomes, the same goals, so that the alignment is there district-wide. So the DSIP is our roadmap. That's the District Comprehensive Improvement Plan. It's our how. As you can see, it's not a straight line. And I'll get into more detail of what this looks like and the action plan and the action steps after looking at our data. The idea here is that we synthesized the data and developed an action plan using that information. The plan's informed by how our students performed on assessments, local assessments, state assessments, as well as how our students and families and staff are experiencing school in our district, and that's our qualitative data survey with our student voice meetings. So there's a lot of data here. So I'm gonna give you the highlights. I know it's a lot of slides, but I wanted you to see the process that we went through to develop this plan. So we'll start with K-8 assessment data. So how did our students fare during the pandemic? This data tells our story, and we're going to take a bird's eye view of K-8. So quickly, most of our students did not participate in the 3-3 assessments. So there really isn't a way to identify any trends or patterns at the district level. So This was not considered for our plan. However, it is informative to look at individual students, and teachers may do that, but most of our kids opted out of the test this year. A great data point is the NWA, our math assessment, because most of our students participated in this last year. As you know, the math measures progress in reading and math, K through 8. It's a computer adaptive test, so the questions adjust based on how the students answer. It compares growth on a RIT scale, which is basically like equal intervals on a yardstick, and it charts a child's growth from year to year. It also projects proficiency on state assessments. So NWA did a study from last year. They used data from 5.5 million students nationwide who took the 3 through 8 math growth assessments in reading math last school year. And these are their findings. So on average, students across the nation made reading and math gains, but at a much lower rate than in pre-pandemic years. They also uncovered that the larger declines were in math. Also, achievement was lower for all student groups, but American Indian, Alaska Native, Black, and Latinx students, as well as students in poverty, were disproportionately impacted. Our data is in line with what's happening nationally. So what they found is what we're finding in South Country as well. So MAP, again, is a temperature check. It helps teachers to plan their lessons and ensure students are getting what they need to succeed. It's designed to measure student achievement at a specific moment in time, so how kids are learning and growing over time. We're going to take a look at the fall to winter map. Spring data wasn't available for this presentation, but I can tell you it was pretty consistent with the national findings as well. So here's one view. This looks at overall proficiency, and these are predictor levels, so how students would perform on state assessments. So students, if you look all the way to the right, that's all grades. Students in grades 1 to 3 performed lower from fall to winter. So why would that be? So we hypothesized 3 different things. Remote students in the fall took the assessments at home. So testing conditions at home are not the same as in school. There are different distractions that can interfere with engagement and focus. We also know that many of our students rushed through the test. So NWA has a feature where you can see how long a student spends on each question, and also how long it took them to take the test. And it looked like many of our students didn't spend a lot of time on the test. So why do we think that? Well, we were thinking about the social emotional needs of our students. We were trying not to stress them out about tests, and this may have an unintended consequence of where they may not have thought it was important, so they kind of just rushed through the test. We also know that students were in a hybrid model for a good part of the year, and we know that students learn better when they're in school. So that is the reason why we believe our students perform that way. Here's another view. What this shows is how kids are moving, achievement levels are moving, so mobility. So quickly in grades 1 to 3, 12% of our students moved up, 57% stayed the same, 31% of our students, 31% moved down, which is concerning. And it's pretty consistent for 4th and 5th, and 6th grade for ELA. There's a similar pattern there. Take a quick look at the math map assessment, same fall through winter. Consistent with national findings, our students are performing lower in math than in reading. So 31% are proficient, or 69% of our students are not proficient in math on the math assessment in grades 1 through 3. Here's the achievement mobility. It's about the same for ELA and for math. Here, So there are many ways that we use this information, too many to share, and we already have like 75 slides. But I wanted to give you a snapshot of how we use this information to inform our work and to tell our story. So we can look at subscores. So here's an example of grade 1 math. We can take a look at how students are performing certain concepts and skills. For example, here, measurement and data, number and operations, operations in algebraic thinking and geometry. We can also look by student. So what this crazy slide typically has student names on the left-hand side, and then their scores go across the top row. So this is a tool for differentiating and to help with small group instruction. We can see who needs enrichment and in what areas as well students need extra support. So for example, in the top, the second row, the yellow student, they're doing well, but their average in literacy and informational text and foundational skills, that's an area where we know that we can work with that student. And this would be a class, typically. We also took a look at our reading data, so we use Fontes and Pinnell reading assessments in grades K through 5. Sorry it's so tiny, it's a screenshot. We're pulling from multiple data sources. But basically, you can see on first glance that the yellow bar is the percentage of students who are reading below grade level. So that's our highest percentage, so most students are reading below grade level. What we also see is that the longer a student's been in school, more likely they're reading on or above grade level. So for example, in 5th grade, 35.3% of students are reading below grade level, while in kindergarten, 55.6% are reading below grade level. However, in 3rd and 4th grade, it doesn't follow the same pattern, and we attribute that to the pandemic.
Ms. Doyle, I have a question.
Sure.
How do you determine that? Is there like a test or something that's given?
So it's a reading test, yes. So it's not online. The student reads with the teacher, and the teacher is doing a running record. And then there's a rubric that they use to score. And the score is made up of different components. It's like fluency, accuracy, comprehension, and those 3 areas determine whether or not the student is reading on or below or above. And then they assign the student a reading level. And it's a continuum from A to Z.
And does that continue after 5th grade?
It does not.
Okay.
Secondary assessment data, it's a bit skewed because not many of our students took standardized tests last year, Regents and AP, but it still gives us some information about how to move forward. So on these slides, 100% equals passing. So for AP, a score of 3 or better is passing. Big picture, I won't go through every test, is that fewer students are taking AP exams, and students are performing at a lower level. We believe the dip is due to the pandemic and the resultant hybrid models. So across the board, there was a decrease in the number of students taking AP. So for example, in literature and composition, in 2021, we had 22 students enrolled in that class, 33 students enrolled in the class, 22 took the test. The year before, we had 11 students enrolled, 10 took the test. The year before that, we had 16 students enrolled, and they all took the test. So in the last 2 years, not all the students that are in the class were taking the exam. And that was consistent through every content area in AP. The highlight here is AP Seminar. So this was our first year. We have 70 students enrolled. This year we have 98 students enrolled, so it's growing. The word is getting out. It's a great class. Some of you were there for the performance task. That's not a traditional paper, pen, or digital test. There are 2 performance tasks and then an essay, an end of year exam. So same pattern here, fewer students taking it, performance levels have gone down. I'm just going to scroll through unless you have specific questions about AP. The the story is really the same. Regents data. So in 2020, there were no tests, there were no regents. 2021, we only had 4 regents. That was the ELA, the algebra, science, and living environment. These were optional and only by choice. So if a student was passing with an 85 in the class, it made sense to take the test, and then the counselor was able to determine what their diploma type would be based on the higher score, whether it was the exam or their class grade. U.S. history, the first administration of the new U.S. history exam was supposed to be in January, that was canceled, will be in June, and this is aligned to the new standards that are college and career ready, and our civic readiness pathway will support students with that. But just to give you an example, so in 2021, only 36 kids took the ELA, where in 2019, 289 took them. Algebra, we had 63 students participate. Living environment, we had 64 students participate, and in earth science, we had 34 students participate. So much lower numbers than years past. And there were no chemistry or physics regents last year. So graduation rates. Why is this an important metric? So research tells us that students who drop out of high school are more likely to live a life of periodic unemployment and a higher rate of using government assistance. They tend to cycle in and out of the prison system more than other students who obtain a high school diploma, and their annual income is lower. So if that's not a reason to take a look at this, I don't know what is. So this is a snapshot of our graduation rates from 2017 to 2021. We were close to 90% in August. So you're probably saying, well, if our students' performance levels has gone down, why hasn't our graduation rate? Well, we attribute that to our COVID grading protocols. So we have a safety net. There's a lot more flexibility and ways for students to attain what they needed to attain, credits in order to graduate. We were being responsive to the pandemic and the struggles that our students have. What will this look like for this coming year? With our new assessment plan, which I'll get into a little bit later, we feel like we're going to be heading in the same direction. We're hovering around 90% attendance right now, and we hope to have a 90% graduation rate as well. That was our target in our district improvement plan. Any questions on?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you know how many students dropped out last year?
I don't know offhand.
Last year's class was significantly smaller than the year before.
And do you, by any chance, know how many students attended summer school last year, and how many of them graduated?
Again, not offhand, but we definitely had some who's graduated, right?
I believe there were 9 seniors that were
It
enrolled.
was under 10.
It was all local.
It's another small group.
And does this have the students who went to BOCES? Is that those students who go to school, I guess, later in the day? Is that in the mix here?
Yes.
And I guess my last question is, when you have the percentages, is that of the cohort of the 12th grade class, or is it everyone who is, in 12th grade at the moment?
Yes.
The cohort?
Numbers.
Okay, so those are the cohorts. So then there are more students who could graduate or have graduated than what is being reported in these numbers.
Yes. Correct.
And those students would be from the ones who did not graduate last year.
Right.
Okay. So basically, these numbers could be higher? that correct way of understanding it?
I guess it depends how you look at it, but
Well,
yes.
because if your percentage is only of the cohort,
Mhm.
but then you have more students who are also graduating, you have a bigger amount of students.
Correct.
So,
But that's not how the state looks at
Yeah,
it.
okay, so how does the state look at it?
by the cohort.
Okay,
So looking at it your way, you could be adding people that should have been the
graduated.
previous
Yeah.
year, which would have brought that down.
Yeah,
But this is the correct way to look at it.
Yes.
yeah,
Because
so
I
they
know-
look at 4-year graduation, so it's
Okay.
taking you 4 years to graduate.
And I just asked that because I remember last year some confusion with what Newsday had reported and what the numbers we had, and, you know, it was like their number was lower, but I was like, why is it different? So I
Right.
just wanted to
Yes,
make sure that I understand how these are reported.
good question, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next slide is attendance. This is from September of 2020 to June of 2021. As I mentioned, right now, currently we're hovering around 90% attendance rate for all schools. Just to give you an idea, 18-19, we're at 93%, 17-18, we're at 92%. The real work is around our chronic absenteeism. So the way the state collects data is aggregate chronic absenteeism data. So that includes unexcused and excused. They don't differentiate between the two. And they consider a student chronically absent if it's more than two school days per month or 18 school days per year. The research behind this, we've talked a lot about this as an administrative team. It's pretty compelling. So if you're absent chronically, so that could be 1 or 2 times a month, in grades K to 1, you're less likely to read proficiently by the end of 3rd grade. In 6th grade, you start demonstrating early signs of high school, dropping out of high school. And by 9th grade, you are at risk of dropping out of high school. So this is why we have a focus on attendance. And we really looked at, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later when I get into the how, but having a more supportive approach, working with families to get at the root causes of these absences, and again, approaching this in a supportive way more than a punitive way. And you all supported the changes that we made in our reward attendance policy. That's exactly the types of things that I'm referring to, moving away from the punitive and moving towards the support. So, you know, last year was not a normal year by any that any of us could have imagined. Hybrid models, you know, really affected our attendance rates, our daily rates, our chronic absenteeism. Again, despite all the efforts of outreach that our staff did and our teachers worked hard, and our social workers and our guidance counselors and our parent liaisons going out to the community, we still had students that were not connecting. That did affect our attendance. So we cannot talk about a global pandemic without talking about the social emotional health of our students. Before I get into that, it's important to note, an important piece of our story is our changing demographic. So you can see over the last 10 years, our district demographic has changed. We have a more diverse population. As the population changes, the needs of our students change. In order to create successful learning environments for our increasingly diverse population, we have to think about how we're supporting teacher practice, how our leaders are supporting teacher development. We all must evolve. So this next slide is a survey that came out of the Equity and Education Committee. It's called the Psychological Sense of School Membership. It was designed in 1993 to measure students' perceptions of belonging. We sent the survey out to all students at the high school. We tweaked it a little bit and sent it out to all students at the middle school. And I pulled out 2 questions. I believe there were 20 questions, but I pulled out 2 that were relevant to our work. So the first is, I feel like I belong in my school. So we had 519 high school see, all 64% of students feel like they belong. But the devil's really in the details, right? So if you go to the next slide, and you're looking at demographic breakdowns, it tells a little bit of a different story. So African American, Black students, 53% feel like they belong. Latinx, 65% feel like they belong. Other, 60% feel like they belong. Along with this survey, we also did student voice sessions. And I'm going to show you a quick clip of that. And what those were we met with groups of students to hear from them how they're experiencing school. So we sent the survey out, but we also met with students. Those meetings helped make sense of this survey data for us. So for example, what we learned is that students feel like they belong when they're with other students that are like them. And that's why you're seeing a lot of yellow or neither agree or disagree. And if you look at the activities, I've included a lot of activities at my school. It's different, which was interesting. So what we learned is that students feel that sports is a place where they're feeling like they belonged. However, sports was also communicated to be the only way some students got attention from staff. Latinx students reported that 32% feel like there are activities in their school, but 65% reported they felt like they belonged. So what is that difference? And we learned from those students is that E&L classes are a place where they feel like they belong. However, after school activities or mainstream classes is where they feel like they don't belong. So what came out of all of this is they really wanted a place where they could be with people that are like them. And the result of that was some after-school clubs that we created this year. At the middle school, the point to note is that we didn't ask for LGBTQ data. We didn't think it was appropriate for this level. So we had a non-binary or prefer not to say. So I feel like I belong in that group of students. 25% felt like they belong. But if you look at the activities, I feel like I'm included in lots of activities at my school. That group said, prefer not to say. So we connected that to this belonging question, is that students' belonging is a function of acceptance. And that is something that we learned when we met with the students as well. Yes.
So how do you interpret the I don't agree or I don't disagree? How do you look at that in forms of the, finding out what, getting a percentage of students who feel one way or the other?
So I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
It's hard for me to kind of, get a picture of where the student body is on a particular question when such a large portion of them don't feel one way or the other. So for me, if you ask students, hey, do you guys think you belong? And a quarter says yes, a quarter says no, and half of them say I don't know. To me, the half that says I don't know isn't a good thing. So I was just wondering, how do you interpret the I don't knows on these questions?
That's exactly why we had these meetings with students, because we didn't want to leave it up to our own interpretation. So we wanted to hear it from them.
Okay.
So we knew that just a survey wasn't enough. Because there is a lot of, if they're not answering, what does that mean? Does it mean that they don't feel like they belong, that they don't care, or they don't want to say? So that's why we felt like this wasn't enough.
So are we gonna repeat this survey at some point in the year?
Yes.
And will it have the same I don't know, question, answer?
So we're working with an organization called Collaborative, you know this. It's John Cranapple and Floyd Cobb, the authors of the book that we write, Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity. And one of the things that they do is we look at our data. If they don't feel like this is sufficient data to build off that, to do our work, we'll recreate the survey. The way the survey is meant to be used is a Likert scale, which is not what we did. So that could be part of the reason why it's a little bit difficult to interpret.
And is this by any chance, the survey that went out in part because, you know, we're mandated to put out a survey by us, no? So something else is gonna go out?
Something mandated.
So, we have a cited school, ESSA, they said that every year you have to send out a survey to the students and the parents and the faculty?
That was not something that we were required to do for
No?
our status this year. No.
Not this year. Are you aware that we have done in the past?
I'm aware of surveys that we've done through PLC Associates, our partner that's working with us,
Okay.
but it's their internal document, it's never shared with the state.
Okay,
So I'm not aware of any other surveys.
thank you.
You're welcome. So just to give you a snippet, I have no idea how long I've been up here, so does anyone have timing? I want
It's about 35 minutes.
Full flashlight.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just kidding.
Do this. Alright. I'm just going to show you a community circle. This was our first one that we facilitated. I didn't ask Monica for permission to use her picture. I apologize in advance. So community circle is part of a restorative justice approach. It's where you basically usually sitting in a circle. We had some kids in a classroom and some kids on a Zoom, on a Google Meet. And you set norms and then you ask questions. And it's meant to be a safe space where you can talk about anything and you're not judged and there doesn't have to be any response to what you're saying. And we use this format to assess how our students are feeling and specifically whether they feel like they belong at Bellport High School. So these are high school students. So I'm going to just show you the first question. This is Kai Watkins, he's facilitating this. And this is a heterogeneous group of students. What we learned later is that you really should do this with a homogeneous group of students, which then we started to do. But this was our first one.
So I want to thank all of the students for coming in. So hopefully you can see me on this link. This is our first ever, what we call as our Student Voice Community Circle. So the reason why you're chosen, the reason why you're here is because we want to hear all your voices about some of the issues and some of the things that go on here at Bellport High School and in the South Country School District. Now, it's very important that you are in this meeting because some adult said they're very confident that you're able to share your opinion on whatever it is. And your opinion is not going to be swayed, and you're not going to be influenced by anybody else's opinion. You're just going to give your own personal opinion. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for your own voice. We're not looking for a collective voice. We're looking for a unique voice for every single situation. Now, when we do these things, there's kind of like some rules and a script that goes along with what we call a community circle. So let me give you what that is. So the first thing, and all of these are on equal importance, but I'm going to tell you the first one. So the first one is be your best self. Whatever that means for you, you just want to do whatever it is the best that you have. Second one is when everybody's speaking, you want to listen. So let's say Flory has something to say and Hartman has something to add in. He's just going to wait till Flory's done and then he's going to say something. We're just going to go in the order in which we do. We're not going to go over anybody who's been listening to any because even if you don't agree with what they're saying, it's very important that we listen to them. The next thing is we're going to speak honestly from the heart. So you can say anything in here. Whatever your opinion is, we want to hear it. That's why you're here. The next one is, so let's say Hartman says stuff. I'm using Hartman because Ted Hartman talks all the time. And Hartman says something, and I'm using Hartman for example, because we disagree on some topics, right? We disagree on some things. But as we're disagreeing, we're going to do a response. So I'm going to listen to his point, and I expect him to listen to my point. And even though we disagree, we're going to use words that are respectful and not offensive. And me and Hartman have conversation all the time, and it's great. That's why he's here, right? Next, while you're encouraged to speak and answer every question, you don't have to. So if there's something that you don't have an opinion on, you can say just pass. But we hopefully that you're able to answer all the questions. And the last thing is, well, that's not true because we're videotaping this. So I guess it's a good time to tell you, we are recording this. So what you're saying is not confidential. We're going to show this to everybody. So just keep that in mind. But though, we don't want you to hold back on any of your opinions. Nothing you can say here, no Ms. Doyle's on him, Ms. Tetron. Go ahead, Ms. Tetron, go.
No
Sorry, Mr. Watson, if Ms. Factor is nearby, I just want to confirm if anybody needs a translation.
Yeah, she's going around and translating all the students that need.
Okay.
As I'm speaking, she's going, but thank you. And so I think Ms. Antoine and Ms. Doyle can speak to this. We're telling them that everything they say is full go, right? They can have any disciplinary action and any of these opinions. Okay, great, they're shaking their head. So there you go, you got it, you see it, they're on the screen, you see it, and they're saying no, you can say whatever it is that you want, right? All right. So here we go, here's the first. Now, this is also important due to the nature of how we are having this on the Zoom meeting. All I ask is you just mute if you're in the room. And if you're not in the room, it doesn't matter, we're not gonna get any feedback. But when you're speaking, you can unmute yourself, right? When I am, I'm just gonna close this. Oh, if we get,
Hey, Matt, can you get me I can't see it from here, the 20 minutes and 4 seconds. So that was setting the norms, and then I just want to show you just the first question, so you can see. Thanks, Matt.
do you feel connected to Belport High School? And do you feel like you belong at Belport High School? So Amaya, start with you, go.
Seeing as I've been here for most of my education, yes. I feel like whether you belong or not kind of depends on if you make friends or if you make connections with people here, and I've done that, so yeah, I feel like I belong. I feel good.
Sorry, Amaya, I'm just trying to summarize this transcript. You said you feel like you've been here, you made some sort of connection, so you do feel like you belong here? And when you say the first part of it, do you feel connected to high school? Okay, great. So if you couldn't really hear, she said that she's been here for a while. So educationally, she made some connections and she got connected to the school. But it didn't always start like that. Am I reading that properly? All right, maybe I'll come around and make it, right? So, yeah, how about this? This is what we make some work a little bit. I'll come around, you can stay muted, I'll come around with a couple books so everybody can hear from mine your announcement. So you can kind of like talk to me, right? So, Amaya said it didn't start like that, but she grew into being connected to the high school. Hartman, what about you? What do you think?
Coming from not around here when I was younger, and then moving to Belport when I was older, I think one of the best parts about Belport is trying to like connect you to the high school, not just through like sports, but teachers and like people as well. I've had nothing but great experiences here, and I'm thankful to have gone to Belport throughout my whole educational career, I guess.
Okay, so this goes on for a while, but I just wanted to give you a sampling of what this looks like. So what we learned after meeting with the authors of the book is that the best way to do this, as I mentioned, is with homogeneous groups of students, so folks from the equity committee and some administration and teachers volunteered to meet with groups. So Black females, Black males, white females, Latinx males, and we've had those meetings separately. We took all of notes from everything that they said, we synthesized it, shared it with the administrative team, shared it with the equity committee, and that informed our work in our DSIP. So it's a great experience. It's something that we want to build in as a regular thing of how we operate, because who is it more important to hear from than our students? Okay, so this slide is the reason why, one of the reasons why we are a target district. There's no other way to say it, disproportionately suspend students of color and students with special needs. So only 17% of our students are Black. However, last year, 47% of our suspensions were Black students. 41% of our students are Latinx, and 38% of our suspensions were for Latinx students. Restorative justice is an approach to discipline that endeavors to stop the school to prison pipeline. All staff are taking part in this professional learning day next week on Superintendent's Conference Day. Community circles will be presented, restorative circles will be presented. Community circles build community, restorative circles repair relationships. Anyone that interacts with a student in our district is invited to this day. And this is an area of growth for us.
Ms. I have a question. Those students who are suspended, over and over and over again, is there a different approach that is taken at some point? Or is it just the same punishment for the same action that's done over and over again?
So it shouldn't be, and that's what restorative justice endeavors to do, is that, for example, if there's a fight between two students, if there's not a repairing of relationships, that's going to fester and continue on. So if the student is continuing the behavior and it's in our code of conduct and it's a non-negotiable, of course we take a progressive approach, right? So we don't jump to suspension, but if it's something that's egregious, that bringing a weapon, things like that, then we have to suspend. But if we can take a learning opportunity for the student, that's the approach that we will go to, we should go to. So I know that this approach, and not everyone has had access to this learning, will change these numbers.
Now, I haven't seen any data about students who are removed from class, and I know from experience that that is just as bad as being suspended from school. You're not in the classroom. So is there any data that you have that you could share with the board about the amount of students that are removed from class? What those numbers look like? Because I think, it's probably the same as, not the same, but has the same impact on the students as being suspended.
Yeah, I think that's, if it's captured in eSchool, it's something we could share.
Okay.
I don't know if every classroom will be captured in there. Okay. So we also surveyed our staff. That's a vital source of information. We used an SEL survey called a Building Equity. There are 20 questions. We just took the ones devoted to social emotional learning. They're designed to probe beliefs about the effectiveness of school systems for supporting students' counseling and mental health needs, as well as discipline and attendance. So these are just some highlights from that. So 18% of our staff feel that safety is an issue. Bullying is not a problem. The staff is split on this question. Students have at least one adult in school who cares about them. We know that this is the key to belonging, inclusivity, and dignity, and this is where we get to 100%. I know Dr. Gianni has been very supportive of this and communicating this and believes in this. We know that what we learned is that there are not always structures to support this question. So we promote positive race and human relations to better understand and interact with students with different backgrounds. We also learned that our staff don't feel supported in these efforts, and they're hesitant to have some of these conversations. Our school's programs and policies designed to improve attendance. We've done a lot of work around this area that I'll share with you. Our school's discipline plans are restorative rather than punitive. That's what we'll be doing next week. Some secondary staff have had this learning. Elementary, this will be their first time. Students are treated equitably when they misbehave. Again, restorative justice will support this. Students from specific subgroups are more likely to be sent out of class, suspended, or expelled. This is very telling and aligned with our disproportionality and discipline. Third data source are our families. We had 967 responses. The idea behind this was to build a communication bridge between families and school. So we asked questions about visiting the school. Is everybody easy to talk to? Teachers, administrators, responders. And it was pretty consistent for each question. When you visit or call the school, do you feel welcome? That was also, had a connection to our belonging survey. So our students, about 65% felt like they belong, and about 65% of our families feel welcome. So there's a connection there. Does the school have high expectations for my child? Again, very similar response. So what we don't know, we're missing a lot of data. So not everyone participated in the survey, not all our students answered the survey. So there's a lot of, we're just considering that. We know there were populations that encountered learning barriers throughout the school year, and we know that there's more work to do to understand really the implications of the pandemic. So just to go back to our visual, and this is the how, and our roadmap. So this is all of that data and everything I just presented went into developing this plan. So we came up with 3 priorities: increasing student attendance through prevention, intervention, and communication strategies. So that's number 1. Creating a culture of care while students feel a sense of belonging and connection to the school community. Number 2. Number 3 is ensuring access to learning for all students through instructional best practices. So on the top are the priorities, on the bottom are the action steps. So for the attendance priority, we rewrote our attendance policy. We came up with interventions that are consistent across our district. We have attendance committees that are looking at attendance. We have parent liaisons that attend our student support meetings to reach out to families when their students are not attending school. To support a culture of care, we've implemented SEL programs, second step, Mind Up, Why Try, for our students K through 12. We're working with Core Collaborative, as I mentioned, on developing looking at our data, looking at a problem of practice, and building capacity within our staff to uncover what those problems are and make changes. We're continuing our voice sessions. From our students, we started new after-school programs. So the Latin Dance Club, the Multicultural Club, esports, our partnership with Music Breathe, that all came out of our data. Our Restorative Justice on Superintendent's Conference Day will all support the culture of care. Ensuring access to learning. We have many partners with this. Susan Resnick is working with our teachers on ensuring students have support with our Math and Focus program. We continue our partnership with Teachers College, PLC Associates, and our implementation of RTI, academic support, and our assessment plan will all support our students and align with our priorities. So this visual you've seen already. Basically, quickly on the left is our old assessment plan, on the right is our new assessment plan. We moved to more formative assessments, less testing, more information and time to digest this and make plans to address our students' gaps and plan our instruction for that. Questions? Yes.
Ms. Doyle, I wanted to go back to the survey data of the faculty. And these 2 slides are 2 of the most alarming slides that I've seen in the presentation. And the one where it talks about students from a specific subgroup are more likely to be suspended, removed, or expelled from class. The fact that this was answered by our faculty, and a large portion, almost half of them, feel that this is being done at all, is a very big problem for me. And I just wanted to ask, has there been an attempt to really look into why they feel that is the case?
So, in a short answer, no. What our responsibility is to respond to it, right? So this was anonymous, so we weren't going around knocking on doors asking people why they were answering this way. But the data is aligned with why we're a target district, right? So our response is restorative justice. We know that will support this 100%.
And the bullying, can this data be broken down into specific schools or no?
I don't remember if we asked them in school. I don't think so. There wasn't any identifying information, so I don't believe so. No.
Okay, I just didn't want to gloss over those two things because
Yeah.
to think that half of the faculty, think that, specific subgroups of students are being, suspended or removed from class, that's more than half of the people who responded.
So the 252 people responded, so it's not half of our faculty.
Well, half of the respondents,
Half of the respondents, yes.
which is still a lot.
It is a lot.
That's, I don't know, that bothers me quite a bit.
That's why it's here. Because it bothers all of us, for sure.
Looking at our demographics, and obviously the changing demographics of the past 11 years, we definitely see a large enrollment of our Hispanic, Latino population, and our L population has nearly tripled since 2010. Would it be possible for us to receive NICESLAT data? How our students are doing in the NICESLAT and how many years they have been in the program, I think would also help to paint a picture of how our students are doing. Part of what you talked about with the NEWA was that many of our students that are across the nation are struggling, especially in the Hispanic community. So I think that might help to paint a picture if we could get the data from the NICESLAT, and specifically how many years they're in the program would be very helpful.
Absolutely, we can absolutely provide that. You will find, generally speaking, that our English language learners progress in their English development. Where they struggle is in the academic area.
In the content area.
Yes. Generally speaking, that's
Yeah.
a generalization, but we certainly bring you that data.
Yeah, just I think it would help to paint
Of course.
a picture. Great, thank you.
And then Monica shared something with me today. 171 new ENO students.
Yes, 166 since the beginning of the school year. We just went over 700 in the district.
How many of those, I don't know if you know the number offhand, are entering?
How many are entering? I don't know offhand, but I will
Right.
tell you that we are seeing for the very first time ever, many new entrants that are coming in with a richer academic history. A lot of them are coming from South America for the first time. So this is the first time I've ever seen in the 15 years I've been here that there are students that are testing in at transitioning and expanding levels.
Okay.
We still have, large majority are entering
Are
emerging, but
entering.
we have this brand new, large number of students that are coming in with a stronger academic history.
So I just want, obviously if they were coming in as entering, what we might be doing is changing our program if we're having a large
But
amount.
they continue to be the majority. Majority of them are entering and transitioning.
Are they entering secondary or?
Entering would be a level,
Okay.
their language level.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by entering, I apologize.
It's all right, that's teacher
We
talk.
always have a conversation amongst ourselves, I apologize.
Yeah, so that would be entering and emerging of the first two proficiency levels.
Okay,
So typically, our largest number of new entrants are at the kindergarten level, right? And 10 years ago, we found that many of them were coming in as entering and emerging at that point, because a lot of them were new immigrants to the country. And then for a while, they were children that were born here. They were coming in and emerging and transitioning levels. But we are beginning to see that trending back a little bit in that largest portion. But typically speaking, most of our new entrants are entering or emerging students. This year, we are seeing a new influx of South American students that are coming in at the transitioning and expanding levels, specifically at the secondary level, the high school. We saw a lot of that, which is great. But
See, that data would be, I think, very helpful.
Yeah,
That would-
absolutely, I'd love to.
Yes, question. Thank you very much for that very comprehensive presentation. One of the seminars that I attended, that I spoke about earlier, spoke about in planning for the future and the CARES money that districts have received to make up for lost educational time because of the pandemic, could be utilized with extra tutoring. Do you, in your data and in your discussions, have you spoke about the need for tutoring? Is there a greater need for tutoring that could help in some of the areas that are deficient?
Sure. I think we're still learning our students' needs right now. We're just finishing up our first assessment cycle. So I think we'll have a better idea probably, at the end of the month where our kids are this year. But it's not something that we put in our plan for the CARES money.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about whether you've seen any results from the community circles that you've been using with the older students in terms of behavior modification and, healing any relationships or also addressing their feelings about whether they really belong here.
So this is secondhand, but I know in the high school there's been a few restorative circles that have happened this year, where students were not getting along for whatever reason, and the relationship was repaired and the situation was squashed, and the feedback was positive. I think I facilitated 3 that I'm aware of this year, and that's something that we want to build out, and it's why we're having all of our staff learn this approach.
So that also gets into the question that was asked about the staff surveys that were done, where they're reporting actually, the way I read this pie chart is they're confirming what we already know from the other data about suspensions and disciplinary action and the disparity, and that's why we're on why we have the DSIP in place. So I'm looking at this pie chart again with a lot of teachers who are saying that certain subgroups are more likely to be sent out of class, suspended, or expelled. With regard to sending out of class, are there any supports in place so that, basically it would be a behavior modification or something so that it could just be taken care of kind of in the moment or in the classroom without
Yes.
having the child sent out? Could you elaborate a little bit about how you're handling these things?
So I think every building has what we call a reflection room, where the students have the time to decompress, to calm down, to take deep breaths, to think about the situation with the goal of them getting back to class. So it's an intervention before things escalate, before we get to any sort of disciplinary action.
And is there a faculty member that is part of this reflection room?
Yes.
I appreciate, all the additional information you've given here. I've heard a lot during the course of the curriculum and instruction meetings, as have other trustees who've been able to attend, and also the trustees who've read the minutes from the meeting. But looking at how you're distilling it using data in connection with your plan gives me a level of comfort that there's a structural plan in place to deal with it, so that things are not being handled arbitrarily on an individual basis, but it's being handled consistently. There's structure, the students know what to expect, and I'm glad to see that. thank you for that.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Mr. Sodi, he helped a lot with the data, and also Janine Allen, she's a parent on the equity committee. She helped to put together the slides for our belonging survey. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Doyle. Thank you, directors.
I just have one question. How does the increase in students who are getting free reduced lunch, how does that financially impact the district, if it does in any way?
It impacts us by state aid return, and what, do you want?
I just didn't hear the question.
How the increase in free and reduced lunch students impacts the district.
From a financial perspective?
Yeah.
It's a definite component in our state aid formulas.
So, I heard during the pandemic, some of the school districts on Long Island they got something because they had more students who got free reduced lunch. Can you kind of speak to that? Do you know what I'm talking about? I forgot what it was that
I
they,
have a guess of what you're talking about.
yeah,
You're talking about PEBT cards?
yes, yes,
You hear it?
yes.
Those were families that were already receiving SNAP benefits through the state of New York. They received an additional allocation of SNAP benefits through an actual card that they could use to purchase food and things. If the districts were a CEP district, community eligibility provision, which we are not one of those districts. We just don't have enough students, enough families who are at those income levels. So we are really just shy of being CEP eligible, but what you're hearing about is districts that are CEP eligible.
Mhm.
Every single family in that district received that card.
Okay,
For us, we had to send the data to the state of our families that are already getting SNAP benefits, and only those families receive the additional card.
gotcha. All right. So if you have more students, or, if you have a lot of students on free reduced lunch, you get more money back from the state?
If you reach certain levels, you can file for different programs. The CEP Community Eligibility Provision is actually a federal program, and it can be district or building specific. So you could be CEP eligible for a building or CEP eligible for a whole district. And either of those means that every person who goes to that building or district gets fed lunch and breakfast for free, regardless of what the family's income level is. And that is because a majority of the families in the district meet those levels. The magic number in Long Island is approximately 70% of the families have to be eligible for free and reduced. It's a complicated formula, but from an umbrella perspective, that's the number, and we hover at about 63% of our families. And it didn't seem to move much in the pandemic. I mean, it's like, you don't want your families to be in a worse position.
Yeah.
But if the pandemic moved it, we were ready to move into a CEP eligible district. But unfortunately, it did not move it enough for us to qualify. So you are right, there are surrounding districts, Patchogue, Bedford is one of them, who is a CEP district, and every family in that district got that card. Our families got them, but only the families that already are on SNAP.
Thank you for that information.
But this year, because of the pandemic, there's still the free lunch, isn't there?
For the course of the nation, free and
Yes.
reduced lunch is, lunch and breakfast is free for all students in the United States.
Regardless of income eligibility.
Makes it right, no matter where you live in the whole US.
But this is through SNAP benefits.
This is SNAP benefits, we work, that's a New York State benefit, and we work directly with the state to provide them with that data, and those families got mailed those cards.
Excellent. Thank you.
So we have,
I
Madam
think
President.
you've completed your portion here.
We're done, yes. Mr.
Oh,
Reyes.
we have closing remarks by board members?
I
Or
just
do you have more
real quickly,
questions?
The community circle link, could you send that to us so that we could watch the video in entirety?
You weren't able to,
It's not, now it's locked.
Working in
It's
the
yeah,
PM.
it's locked.
Oh.
It's not a big deal,
yeah.
but this way, you know, if you get a chance, that we, or, you know, so we can watch it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Sorry about that.
Okay, all right, well, I'll go to you if you have any closing remarks.
No, just thank you so much for the presentation, thank you to all the directors for coming, and thank you to our wonderful students and our teachers for our beautiful pictures.
Mr.
Thank
Parker.
you guys, I'm sorry, I didn't think.
Okay,
they helped me
Mr.
out a
Trent.
lot. Thank you.
I just want to echo what Ms. Ruda said. Ms. Doyle, thank you for the presentation. It was very informative and very enlightening. I appreciate it.
Ms. Felice?
Yep, likewise, and thank you for Board Appreciation Acknowledgement. It was a wonderful surprise, and it's good to have workshops every now and then to do away with the general business so that we really can get into a deep dive of the data that you presented. So thank you, everyone involved, for all the work that you did.
Not to repeat verbatim what everybody has said, but I join with them. But back when we were talking about the civil rights activists that we would like to introduce, I saw a number of heads nodding in the background, so if you could stop us after the meeting and,
Or
you know,
just
let
pass
us
along the info to me and I'll.
give it to you and you'll
I'll get
pass
it-
it
I'll
on
get it
to, okay. That's even better, so. Mr. Trent has the motion to adjourn, and it's seconded by Ms. Aruda. And all in favor, it's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.